All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Marketing Paint. My name is Will Hankey. This is the podcast where we talk with real window treatment and awning service providers or business owners about their successes and struggles related to marketing their products and services. Today is a guest that I've known for quite a while now and a veteran in the window treatment, window shading industry, Rory McNeil. Rory, thanks for being on today.
Hi, Will. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, real excited to have you on. We've been trying to do this for quite some time. We keep passing each other at various conferences, and I'm finally glad to have an opportunity to sit down and talk to you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, let's jump right in. I know that you are up to several things in the industry right now, and you've been in the industry for a long time. Tell us, give me the maybe, well, I usually say the 2-minute elevator pitch, but we may need a little bit longer. But kind of give us the elevator pitch of what you're up to now.
Okay. Well, these days I run Window Shading Pro, which is a news and information newsletter for the window covering industry. It goes out to over 3,000 subscribers in North America, but there's probably about 11 other countries that we have subscribers in, but the majority of them are the US and Canada. And I try to publish that every couple of weeks, but sometimes in my own business life, I get busy with other projects and don't get to it every 2 weeks. But there's always enough news around the world. And so I tend to curate the news, read a lot of news articles from all over the world, and put that into Window Pro and then editorialize what I think is important for dealers and fabricators to be thinking about. And predominantly these days, that's always been smart home automation and exterior shading. Those are the two fastest growing areas of our industry. And I feel more and more dealers need to be dipping their toes into those categories if they're not already really committed. But so I write a lot about those two areas specifically, but areas where I think that they would be of interest for window covering readers. And usually I include some inane YouTube video links and occasionally TikTok when I come across it, but I try not to use TikTok at all. But there's some interesting content. Usually pets in blinds. That's a good thing.
Right.
Always good for a laugh. Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
So the other stuff I do is I sell software to blind manufacturers, blinds and drapery manufacturers. So that software is typically for companies that have gotten to the size of 30 to 40 employees and are running their business on Excel and QuickBooks, and all hell is breaking loose and they can't expand anymore without automating their processes. So that's where we can set them up with online order entry so their customers can place their orders online so they can minimize customer service costs. And then we show them how to link all their material costs to a bill of materials so they can see exactly what products cost them. They can more accurately quote large jobs. And it really just usually transforms a business's ability to manage themselves, and it gets them ready for the next level of growth. So I like that a lot because my whole career has been in the blind manufacturing business. I had my own business with my wife making roller shades, draperies, Roman shades. So it's an area I understand really well. So it's fun to be able to go into a business that's growing but hitting a ceiling and give them some solutions. I also do some consulting for the industry. Usually it's or has been companies outside of the US who are trying to understand the US market a little bit more completely. So those are the main things that I do these days. But when Window Shading Pro is really probably takes up most of my time because of how much time it takes to find and curate that email newsletter.
Yeah, I can imagine that takes quite a bit. Your newsletters are in depth too. It's not just a couple articles here and there. I mean, there's quite a bit of meat in there.
Yeah, every now and again I'll come across some, spectacular article from Europe that really talks about how the building industry is changing their specifications for glass and for exterior and interior window coverings. And that's a sign to everybody here, or at least it should be, that's coming to the US. These higher standards to try and keep the heat out of buildings to reduce cooling and heating costs.
Yeah.
There is one other thing that recently signed an agreement with a company in Australia who manufactures cutting tables and ultrasonic welding machines and stop saws for production. So we're setting up a showroom with them here in Jacksonville so that US fabricators can come down and see these machines. And we'll also be taking a 20 by 40 or a 30 by 40 booth at the Sun Shading Expo in Orlando in November. I think you're doing some speaking there, right?
Not this year, but I did
No?
speak there last year. That's a huge event. I mean, it is monstrously big. So
Yeah, it's getting bigger too. I mean, on the ATA side, which is the Advanced Textiles show, there's a lot of exterior shading. You probably saw that when you were there.
yeah.
And awning systems and fabrics. And they have about 200 exhibitors and 4,000 or 5,000 attendees. And Sun Shading Expo exhibits or co-locates with that show. And at the moment, I think last year they had about 45 exhibitors, and already they have 60 exhibitors confirmed for this year, including Coolise and a few other of the industry leaders. So it's nice to see that they're growing that show, because they certainly put on the biggest show in the world, which is the Messe Stuttgart show and R&T in Stuttgart, which is coming up in February, and that's been sold out for over a year. Can you imagine?
Oh yeah.
That's how that show basically decided after COVID to shut down and just wait till it was safe for their exhibitors to and attendees to attend. So it's been 4 or 5 years since they last did that show. And that's a show I've been going to since the end of the 80s. So it's
Oh wow.
just a phenomenal show. I mean, I don't know if you get a chance to go, but it certainly lets you see how global our industry is. Sometimes going to shows in this country, you don't get that sense. You know, it looks like there's the Chinese and there's the Americans, and that's it. But in reality,
Right.
every major country in the world has a booming window covering business, window shading business, and you can really get that sense when you go to Stuttgart.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always looking for an excuse to go to Germany. I mean, that doesn't sound like a
Okay.
horrible thing, right?
Well, that's your heritage, right? Hanky's a
Yes, it
German
is.
last name, right? Yeah. Where from in Germany? Do you know which part
Oh
is your
no, I
family
have no
from?
idea. No.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
Um,
that's fantastic. So so you partnered with them and now you're building a showroom in the Jacksonville area for that.
yeah, well, we found space that was ready to go, and we just need to widen doors and get some more electricity into the space. But we'll be receiving the machines in September, so the showroom will be up and running before the show in Orlando, before the Sun Shading Expo.
Wow. Okay. That's
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah, that'd
yeah.
be good. And
And it
like I said,
plays into what I like most. It's, having labor saving devices for fabricators.
right.
And gone are the days, when I was 10 years old, I was stapling blind fabric onto wood spring rollers. That's how you attached a fabric to roller blinds back in the day.
Yeah.
And things are a little different today.
Yeah. Yeah.
These days, your average fabricator will have a $120,000 cutting machine that is cutting all 4 sides of the shade fabric. Same in the awning industry. The big guys in the awning industry are all totally automated.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, our software links to the machinery, so it's kind of cool.
There you go. That's awesome. It's interesting you mentioned glass too earlier. We had Anders Hall on previous episode, and that was one big thing he was working on the European side, is all the
I haven't
changes
seen
around
that.
it.
He's the greatest evangelist in Europe for smart window and interior and exterior automation of window
Yes.
coverings to try and convince manufacturers, not just manufacturers. He's doing a good job of getting countries on board to new standards.
He
So
is.
Anders, he was I think a 20-year career veteran of Somfy. And now that I wouldn't call him retired, but now that he's changed his career, his focus is really on automating commercial windows, because that's really where the biggest saving is. But the
Yep.
same standards and the same research applies to in-home too,
Yeah.
residential.
Yeah. And a lot
I
of
haven't
things.
seen that. I haven't seen that either. I have to check that
Oh yeah. Yeah.
podcast out.
Check that one
I
out.
saw him in Shanghai just a couple of weeks ago.
Oh,
We were
cool.
staying at the same hotel. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting how much ahead of us they are on that side of things. And it,
Well, it's
you know,
because sorry to interrupt. That's because energy costs are so high. And after Germany invaded Ukraine, we can say that on a podcast, right? That actually happened. Um, uh, After that happened, and energy costs skyrocketed in Europe, it certainly uh, it makes Americans not as aware of how important those costs are. But if we all saw our energy costs double, or even in some cases triple, it would certainly change our focus too.
yeah, for sure. And I think most of our listeners are US based. But we should probably be paying attention to the things that they're doing there, because they eventually will roll out over here as well.
Oh, for sure. I mean, if you look at the average uh, large size home here, let's say 2,500, 3,000 square feet plus, those folks are paying $400, $500, $600 a month for their energy bills. And right now that's just cooling because of how hot it is everywhere in the
Sure.
US. But in Jacksonville, we'll get down to colder weathers. Northern Florida will get into the mid 30s in the winter. And so it's heating costs too. And if you can allow more sunlight into your home during the winter months and reduce the amount of sunlight coming through the glass with either exterior shading or a combination of exterior and interior, it dramatically changes everything.
Yeah.
And I just don't think we think about it often enough because it's not a massive line item in the budget. But once it starts getting over $500, $600 a month, that just by good shading technology on your home, then you could probably reduce that by as much as a third.
Right.
It's significant.
Yeah. Yeah. And from the marketing side, that's good stuff to have on your website, right? I mean, people are
Yeah.
looking for those kinds of benefits as well. So always good to talk about the benefits of something.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's circle back to talking about you, and how long have you been in the window treatment industry?
Well, I'm 56 years old now, years young now, and I was making roller blinds when I was 10 years old, thanks to lax child labor laws in Scotland. Or maybe it was just holiday pocket money. I can't remember. But I used to, stain wood slats before you could buy wood slats, 50 millimeter or 2-inch, already pre-stained. And we had to do them by the order. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
So back in the UK, my family, my father, my uncle started a company called Eclipse Blinds, which these
Okay.
days is owned by Hunter Douglas. But back then, not only was there Eclipse Blinds, which made non-branded components and systems and machinery for blind makers, there was also Apollo Blinds, which was my father was probably the pioneer of franchising, American-style franchising in the UK. And at one time, the UK franchise operation, which was called Apollo Blinds, had 140 franchisees across the UK.
Wow.
And all of those guys were manufacturers of blinds. Today, Hunter Douglas owned the master, or I think it's Luxaflex, but one of the Hunter Douglas brands owns the master franchising agreement
Yep.
for those franchisees. So they're all still independent stores, but they're under one umbrella like Budget Blinds.
Right. Right. Wow. So
So,
you've been doing it for a
so when I was
while.
a kid, yeah. So when I was a kid, I was, installing blinds, measuring blinds. I was in the sample department making samples for the vertical blind book that we had, or the roller blind books we had for the UK market. But in 1990, when I was 23, or 1989, I came out to the US, to Orlando, ironically,
Oh,
to do the draperies and window covering show as a vertical blind fabric company coming from Scotland. And the show was tremendous. And after that, I came out and drove 3,000 miles around Florida, following up on all the leads. And by the time I got to Jacksonville, again, coincidentally, I realized there's no way that we can sell to American blind manufacturers from Scotland. We have to have a place in Florida. So I called up my cousin, who was involved in the business for about 3 years of Eclipse's life in Miami, and we set up Eclipse blind systems in Miami in 1990. And then the company sold, and neither one of us wanted to continue with the new management. So I left the company and moved out to California with my wife and kids. And then we started a business in California. Initially, that was distributing what back then was the sort of cutting edge of vertical blinds, embossed PVC. And then we grew that into starting a sheer drapery workroom to make sheer draperies that attached to vertical blinds. And then we got into Roman shades and then roller blinds and made some grass cloth Roman shades also. And all the time, there's really two sides of our business. One side would be manufacturing finished product, and then the other side was developing new products I thought were interesting to sell components and systems. So we sold like no-sew bar systems for Roman shades to roller blind manufacturers who could take all of their SKUs and now be in the Roman shade business by using no-sew bars. And then we got into panel track hardware, and we sold probably the first panel track systems in North America, maybe 15, 16, 17 years ago. So all of that stuff is the kind of thing I like, whether it's finding new products and really it was my wife, Rosa, who was running all the manufacturing side of the business. So she has a lot of experience in manufacturing too. And our industry has always been interesting in that the blind business sort of grew at the expense of the soft treatment business, the drapery business. And then the drapery business sort of came back, and then the hard window covering companies, the blind guys, were not really ready for buying sewing machines and getting into the drapery business. So there was always a divide between drapery manufacturers and blind manufacturers. But we kind of straddled that. We were doing both, because as far as I'm concerned, shading and window coverings are all the same category. And you have to be in the market where it's going and where the profitability is. If you're not, you'll just make less money and tie up more and more of your inventory in products that don't move as quickly and as profitably.
Right. And you mentioned that earlier too with the motorization, right? That's the way everything is going now. I'm a huge smart home fan. Love the automation, love, just all of the different things that you can do, plus the profit margins on the motorization stuff is a little higher too. So,
of course. I mean, the typical roller blind, 3 foot wide by 6 foot long, would normally retail motorized with a manual with a clutch for $100.
Yeah.
And once you add $100 motor to that, that's $100 for the manufacturer's cost. Then he's selling it for $200, and the retailer is selling it for $400. So you've gone from a $100 manual roller shade to a $500 shade.
Yeah.
And the folks in our industry who are responding to motorization the best are not increasing in size, not retailers who are adding to their overhead. They're just taking the blinds that they were selling and doubling or tripling the sales price.
Yeah.
And the smart manufacturers are doing the same thing. They make 1,000 blinds a week, but now half of those are motorized, and their sales have increased 200% without increasing overhead. Like, man, that's seems to be the key to any business. How do we make more profit and more revenue without increasing overhead?
Yeah.
Motorization.
Yeah. Motorization. And then, as you mentioned, the other thing is exterior, is the other kind of gaining traction.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
Especially down where you're at, right? And especially in the South, it seems a lot more people are interested in the the motorization of bringing the shades down in the afternoon with the sun. And of course, it's great here in Missouri too, right? But we don't have that long of a season.
Well, what we saw as a result of COVID was that more and more people were spending a lot of time at home. So that gave interior window coverings a real boost. But it also increased the amount of time people wanted to be outside and sort of recapture their exterior space. And in Florida, that means if you're out at sunset, then you're mosquito fodder, at least I am.
Right.
And exterior shading can close off your patios to insects and allow you to run fans in that space. And now you've got a cool area where you can spend more time at home. And that's just exploded the exterior shading market. You can see, again, following sort of European examples, the R&T Stuttgart show, or the Messe Stuttgart folks, 5 years ago created a separate show called Ambience, I think it is, Outdoor Ambience, and
Okay.
that was deliberately to promote the exterior shading and patio furniture industry and the awnings and umbrellas and all that kind of stuff. So they felt it was enough of a trend pre-COVID to create a whole show around exterior shading,
Yeah.
or exterior living, I suppose you could say. So that's very much where our industry is going, and smart retailers will be finding manufacturing partners who can help them get into those product categories. And
Yeah.
usually that means difficult stuff like different types of installers who can use real masonry anchors to the exteriors of building. That starts to get into contractors' licenses, and but they're just critical areas. If you're in the shading business, you need to be in interior and exterior, or vice versa.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great opportunity.
It is. And we see some of our clients on the window treatment side that are starting to add, they're starting small. They're doing like retractable awnings, right? Because again, those are residential. But shade sales, things like that. So starting to kind of get into that extra area. The other thing that I've noticed a lot is the increase in restaurants that are looking for outdoor space post-COVID, right? Because you can sit a little further away from each other.
Well, not just that. I mean, if you've got a patio, the best examples are in Florida, Texas, California, where at night your patio is too cold to fit customers.
Yep.
But by closing off the space and heating it, they can double their capacity. And of course, COVID forced that because we were all happy to eat outside.
Yeah.
But and there was more space required between the tables and so on. But restaurants have seen that it doubles their ability to sell covers, sell meals, and that's critical. So for them, if you take I was in a restaurant in Dallas recently that had a ceiling, retractable ceiling, as well as retractable zip shades on the sides, and that was probably a $60,000 installation for maybe claiming 2,000 square feet, 1,500 square feet.
Yeah.
So it gives you an idea of just how much more value there is on those. And certainly the installation is more tricky, but great opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah. We see it here in Missouri, wineries, for instance, are doing that because their typical season is pretty short, right? So that's a way for them to expand as well. And we see that more and more often. Not that we spend a lot of time at wineries, but maybe we do. I don't know.
Well, you can never spend too much time at wineries,
right? Well, cool. So go ahead.
I was going to say that the exterior shading business, as it relates to the hospitality business, I see more and more wholesale fabricators in North America going to those restaurant trade shows to find those regional and national restaurants who are all rushing to put exterior shading on their patios to reclaim that space, really.
Yeah. Well, listen, you are by far the expert in this industry with all this stuff, and I guess that makes sense while you're doing the Window Shading Pro newsletter. Is it okay to call it a newsletter? Is that kind of what it is?
Yeah, I think that's the best example. When I started it, it was back in '94, and my wife was pregnant, and she had been given bed rest. And I thought, well, if she's in bed, how can I get her to work? But I went and bought maybe not a very nice thing to admit to, but there you go. So I went and bought a modem, and back then, when you bought the slowest modem you could find, or the fastest modem you could find, at 740K or something, you got CompuServe and AOL and I think it was Genie. There's like 4 or 5 different software packages that came with a modem, and all of a sudden you realize you're connected to an entire world, and that was a real learning experience for me back then. And so I started looking on AOL and CompuServe for people who had put window coverings in their bios, and eventually, we're adding more and more people to a discussion group. We used to fill up 3 chat rooms on AOL back in the early days now, and I didn't like it as much as the newsletter or the newsletter format, because most of us guys in the window covering business can't type fast enough to be able to have a conversation in real time, right?
Sure.
Whereas the women were always a lot better. So the drapery pro type people were better at communicating real time and instant messages back then. So as Window Pro, it was called back then, Window Shading Pro, it's called now. As it grew, it was more a kind of question and answer, and I would use it to put news out, but it was always text based. And then
Yeah.
about 8-9 years ago, I thought I just need to change it over to being a newsletter format where I'm finding the information, I'm putting it out. So it was less of a two-way conversation and more of a one-way broadcast. And so the nice thing is, I mean, I know it's very unusual, but I know that we're seeing on our newsletters, over a 60% open rate on the emails, which is really unheard of in
Oh yeah.
marketing. And I
Yeah.
think it has a lot to do with the fact that I've spent so much time in the window covering industry. So most of the people know me personally, and that changes the relationship between reader and writer, really, right?
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. And they know your expertise, all of that kind of stuff. So
Maybe, yeah.
yeah. So with
Reported
the
expertise. Yeah.
right. With the newsletter, who is your target audience? I can imagine there might be a couple different audiences you're after.
Yeah, I'm often asked by folks who use Window Shading Pro for advertising. They say, "Well, what's your demographic?" And I can look at the list and I can tell you that it's probably 60% retailers and interior designers, and then it's probably 15 to 20% manufacturers, whether that's retail manufacturers or wholesale manufacturers, and then the rest are installers, and also national brand names. So everybody from Marco Sonnenberg reads the email on a regular basis to the presidents at Springs and Levelor and other Hunter Douglas divisions. So I know it's closely watched. It's kind of a nice compliment. But from the inception, I never wanted to ask people to give me their bio to subscribe. It was always just give me your email address and I know who you
Sure.
are, but I don't need it, in the way that somebody would be trying to commercially monetize their podcast. And you
Yeah.
don't do that, but the commercial podcast out there that might be for CNN and MSNBC or Fox News, or it might be, those guys are trying to get an idea of their demographic all the time. And I felt that was kind of private information from the beginning. So I just know it because I know the almost all the email addresses that are on there. I know who they are, where they come from. And you know how
Right.
it is also, you can look at somebody's IP address and know where they are in the country and get a quick sense of who that is.
Sure.
Um, such are American privacy laws. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So quite a mix. And I'm assuming the content, when you create the content, you have all those different demographics in mind. So there's something for everyone in there.
Yeah, I mean, you can have a look at the archives and have a look at the kinds of things I'm writing about, but it's everything from the new technology or new technologies in textiles to a before and after shot of an Aspen home. Right? I always, I mean, having been in this sort of window covering business so long, the sharp end of the business is when somebody's home is transformed by window covering. So to see it go from this is what it was, 10 years ago when it went on the market, and this is what it looks like now. I love that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And you guys were recently in Shanghai. You mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, I mentioned that the folks who put on the Sun Shading Expo in Orlando in November also do the Stuttgart, the world's biggest window covering show in Stuttgart. There's probably about 2,000 exhibitors at that show. Yes, a lot of
Wow.
exhibitors,
Wow.
and 75,000 or 100,000 attendees, just massive. So they put on that show, and they also put on a show, what's called R&T Asia, and it's probably been going. I was there for the first one maybe 15 years ago, and it's just exploded in size, so that now it occupies 4 different halls in one of the largest convention centers in the world in Shanghai, their National Exhibition and Conference Center. It's an amazing building. It's designed like a clover leaf. So when you look at it from above, it's
Okay.
very impressive. So I was there for that show because I like to be finding out what's new and what's different. And this year there wasn't as many people visiting from the West. I think because the R&T Stuttgart show is coming up in February, so a lot of people were focused on that show because it's bigger.
Yeah. Oh, it's bigger than that, huh? Wow.
Yeah, it's bigger than the R&T Asia show. Yeah, but R&T also they do a regular show in Turkey too, because Turkey is a very vibrant aluminum and fabrics market. So a lot of fabricators in and around manufacturers in and around Turkey, and they've done shows in Brazil and Australia in the past. So they really are a global organization, and uh, uh, fun to watch their shows grow and the kind of diversity they have at their shows.
Yeah. And I love that you're boots on the ground in these things to know, what's going on, what's the latest in the industry. So, so that you can share those things with everybody else.
Yeah, well, I always think that if you go to a show and regardless if it's a small show and you don't see something new, then you're not looking hard enough because it's there. And as you get older and you think you're more experienced in the industry, you miss stuff because of your own pre-existing concepts of what is interesting. And what I found, what both my wife and I found in Shanghai is after 2 days of 8 hours a day walking the aisles, the third day when everybody kind of left, most attendees were starting to go by that time. Even some exhibitors were starting to cut down their staff. That's when you start to see stuff on the booth that you couldn't see before because there was too many people there.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I saw a lot of new stuff at Shanghai. It's fun to keep an open mind and I'll report on that actually in the next Winter Shading Pro.
Yeah. And I've seen you at conferences in the past where you're moving from one booth to the next, and it may take you 30 minutes because people stop and talk to you and just want to hear more of, the expertise and things that So
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a kind of a curse, but I've traveled a lot in the US. That's not really a curse. That's fun.
yeah,
And you over the years, the same fabricators, manufacturers that I was selling to 30 years ago, the same guys who are in business today.
yeah,
So you develop long-term relationships with these guys and friendships, and so you can't help but get um, distracted, I guess, when you're walking around a show. So
yeah.
sometimes it can be tough to cover a show properly.
Right. Oh, I can imagine. Yeah. So we talked about motorization and exterior. Are there any other current trends that you see that we should be paying attention to right now?
Yeah, I think soft fabrics are making a comeback at the high-end consumer across the country, and our industry has sort of consolidated around some large drapery workrooms. So the folks who are out there who have a drapery workroom business really have the opportunity to expand that because it's a difficult technology to teach new seamstresses to learn because no 20, 30-year-olds are learning the art of sewing.
Sure.
So a lot of the folks, certainly most of our employees, when we had 30, 40 seamstresses, were all in their 50s. That's 20 years ago. So you can imagine that technology sort of ages out. So you start to see pressure on China and Vietnam and other Asian countries, even Mexico, to try and increase their capacity for doing soft treatments.
Okay.
And you start to see American manufacturers buy automated equipment that can help them make Roman shades more accurately because they're difficult to make. Not as easy as cutting a rectangle for a roller shade. So I think that's probably the biggest trend that hard window covering guys are not paying attention to. It's the increasing soft market expansion, whether that's Roman shades and draperies, multiple layer draperies, shears on blackouts, where you're just doubling the value of the window treatment because you're adding more layers.
Right.
And I continue to see that woven woods, or more accurately, we used to call them woven woods, but really it's more grass cloths are eking out a sort of market where the consumer wants more natural product in their home. And grass cloths or woven grasses are light filtering and are warmer typically than some natural man-made products, unnatural polyester man-made products. So
Yeah.
yeah, those are the trends. I think. I mean, motorization's it. You could tell just by being at the Shanghai show that there was probably 30 different manufacturers of motors there. there used to be 4 or 5. That's a big difference.
That is, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's cool. So on the marketing side, since I'm a marketing guy, is there anything that you've seen around some of the bigger companies pushing on like on their marketing, things that they're pushing a little bit more?
Well, I think smart manufacturers like Hunter Douglas um, try to create demand for their products at the retail level by consumer advertising. Not
Sure.
many other companies in our industry can do that, but when they do that, they push those leads back through their own um, gallery dealer network or their platinum dealer network, and that's very, very smart. I wish that more manufacturers, because Google AdWords is kind of an open playground. If you or I wanted to market a new type of window covering, and we already have 1,000 customers in a given marketplace, but they're maybe not used to going and marketing for exterior shading, then it makes sense for manufacturers to consider marketing to consumers to help drive leads for their dealers. And I
Yeah.
don't see that being done enough. I
Yeah.
see it done on the shutter side, where large shutter manufacturers are marketing non-branded product, sometimes branded, but non-branded too, in markets all over the US, and then driving those leads to dealers. Because so many dealers, so many retailers in our industry have seen large companies come and go where, they start out by working through distributors, then they find out who the dealers are, and they try and cut the dealers out, or cut the distributors out and go directly to the dealers. And what I'm suggesting is that some smart shutter manufacturers and window covering manufacturers are realizing that they can help create demand in markets and push those sales to their own customers.
Right.
It's sort of taking that Hunter Douglas business model, but not owning the end sale, but helping your dealer, like really helping your dealer push your product. And that seems to me to be a partnership that more fabricators should be doing.
Yeah.
And it helps their dealer, at the end of the day.
Yeah. Totally makes sense. And they can control the ads, they can control the copy. Plus they know their products, right?
Yes.
So and they
Yeah.
know their consumers. So totally makes sense. So
Yeah, I think you've probably been approached by some manufacturers like that, because they don't want to go into the retail business, but they
right.
sure as heck want to try and encourage their dealers to get that business.
Yes.
And if they can do a better job of marketing, they just have to learn more about Google AdWords, and they have to learn more about digital media.
Yep.
And if you
Yep.
don't, somebody else is going to come and get that business.
Agreed. And you're right. Even just over the last couple of months, we've had an increase in manufacturer related calls that wanted to get into the marketing side. So
Yeah, makes sense. It makes
yeah.
sense for you too to approach these guys and say, look, for X amount of dollars, we can help you control your immediate markets, the ones where they can offer measure and installation services when their dealers don't want to, especially on things like exterior products.
Yeah. Yeah. And then on the install side too, like you mentioned earlier. So
Yeah, very
very
much
good.
so.
Yeah. So Windows Shading Pro, if you had an unlimited budget, what would be the craziest marketing stunt that you would like to do?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, the unlimited budget always comes down to buying email addresses, right? I could buy 5,000 email addresses today that would cost me 50 cents an email address. I guess that's
Sure.
not really unlimited. That's $2.5 grand, right?
Yeah.
But uh, there's probably 20,000 window covering type email addresses that I would buy to build the subscription base. But when you do that, you're really flouting the rules of direct marketing, because those people didn't directly subscribe to your email address. So
Right.
to your publication or to your subscriber base. So that's technically against the rules. And if you get enough people who call it spam, then you're devaluing your own database.
Right.
So you're making it less important. So For me, the unlimited budget would probably go to trade show marketing. But to date, advertising revenue for Window Shading Pro doesn't really support you spending $10,000 to do a trade show, right?
Right.
I'll just continue to grow it organically. That's pretty much
Sure.
how it's been growing all this time. And as long as I have, well, I guess the more important number to me is the engagement rates. What percentage of people we have opening the emails, and then what percentage we have clicking through,
Yeah.
and that's usually about 10%. But it depends on the content. Again, if a good advertiser gives me YouTube video links to put into their email address, I'll take screenshots of the video so it looks like a embedded YouTube video, and it'll take you directly to YouTube site.
Right.
That drives click-throughs dramatically more than just static URLs or HTML links. So that you can have one fabricator who gives me an ad, or one company who gives me an ad who doesn't put any digital media content like YouTube videos in there, and they'll get 100 people who click through to their site, and then somebody like Coolise who gives me dynamic content will see 300, 400, 500, 600 people clicking through to their website.
Right.
Those are leads they can provide back to their customers.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. The other thing you could do with purchasing email addresses is you could upload those to Facebook and Google and then run ads to lookalike audiences, people that look like these people but are not these people, or are these people, right? So that's kind of a way to get more exposure for your brand outside of just emailing them directly.
It's a really good point, but to my discredit, I fell out with Facebook and Instagram, anything Meta, really. But it was, I don't know, 5 years ago, probably around the time that my mom passed away. And I began to, and it was before Cambridge Analytica, the big scandal with Cambridge Analytica using Facebook's database to push negative campaign themes into all of our mailboxes, whether it was Democratic or Republican. It was a horrible time in digital media. And so I said, screw it, I'm not going to deal with these anymore. But I know that's where the people are, certainly. But I've tried to tailor content to folks who want to receive a newsletter in their mailbox rather than necessarily getting their information on Facebook or Instagram.
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah. Well, awesome. Listen, Rory, this has been a fantastic conversation. I really do appreciate your time. If people want to learn more about Window Shading Pro, what are the best ways for them to sign up?
The easiest way is just to go to our website. It's windowshading.pro. And there's a subscription area there where they can sign on to the newsletter, or they can just drop me an email from the website too. I'm pretty easy to find, having been on the internet since '94. If you Google Rory McNeil, I'm there.
Yeah.
Together with all my Instagram and Facebook pictures.
Nice. And then the newsletter's free, right?
Yes, always been free. We just support it by letting advertisers advertise to our subscribers, but we never give the advertisers the mailing list. We never give them any data that is, I consider, proprietary and secure from the list.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, yeah, if you are listening and you're not subscribed to this newsletter, it's a no-brainer.
Where have you been?
Yeah. Windowshading.pro, Pro. That's the place to go. So, Rory, thank you so much for your time today and sharing your expertise. I really do appreciate it.
You're welcome. And if any of your podcast viewers are going to that Sun Shading Expo in Orlando, I'll be exhibiting there on the Ultra Cut booth. Look forward to seeing you there. Awesome.
Yeah, that's great. That's gonna be a good show. Again, thank you so much. I really do appreciate your time. If you are a listener and you enjoy this content or any of the other podcast episodes that we put together, we'd love a thumbs up, a review, something like that on iTunes. But more importantly, just subscribe to the podcast so that you can get alerted for upcoming interviews like this one. I do appreciate you listening and taking your time to do so. And Rory, appreciate you always.
Thanks, Will. Can I put this podcast and perhaps some of your other podcasts on the newsletter?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
I'll do it.
I'm happy to share those with you.
Great.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a great week, and we'll see you on the next episode.